And we are live here with the 2-0 Green Bay Packers. It is a great day, my friends. Victory Sunday night going into Monday morning. Always a good thing to be here. And I've got two of my closest friends, if you want to call it that. I guess if we could call it that if Todd's here. But I've got Todd. I've got the Todd Varney's with me. And of course, the newlywed, Sanjay Murthy.
Hey.
Sanjay, and the newly shaved. Sanjay, congratulations. It's a good thing, I guess, that you didn't make. I was thinking about saying last week, maybe you should have made the bet that they wouldn't put up back-to-back 40 burgers, but I guess they did that too. So You would have had to shave your head anyways. So how's it feel to be bald and how's it feel to be married?
First off, married, it's awesome. Married my best friend. She's amazing. And it was a great wedding. A lot of love and support from everybody around the Packer community and even obviously all you guys that game on and, everybody that is friends with me. So that's cool. Bald is definitely getting something used to. I'm always going like this, because I don't typically have my head like this. But it was kind of funny how many people were like, "Hey, what are you betting on this week?" Or, "Hey, what was your bet this week?" Because I had 42, and I'm like, "No, there wasn't any bet this week." But you never know. Stay tuned on Tuesday. There might be a bet.
So for those of you guys that don't know, the Roundtable, the whole purpose of this is to get some people together from this network and some guests from some different places and different shows. And I have our guest here now, and that is my friend and the godfather of the Packer Report and the hardest working man in Packers media, and that is Ross Uglem. Ross, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And I think I mentioned Packer Report and 10 other websites or something like that. So where all can we find you real quick?
We're starting to shrink that down.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, very much part-time on the Kansas State side for 24/7 Sports at GoPowerCat.com. But the publisher of Bison Report and Packer Report, Bison Report being the North Dakota State men's basketball and football site, and obviously Packer Report being CBS Interactive's Packers only site. I also pitch in and help Andy at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Other than that, though, that's pretty much it, which sounds like a mouthful, but it's certainly been a longer intro or a longer list than that before.
That it has, and you can find Ross after every Packers game. He's doing some live video reaction, give or take about 10 minutes at the post game at Packer Report 66. So kind of his general thoughts. And tomorrow he's got his Monday or Tuesdays that you get after further review, usually up over there.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday. We just had kind of a death in the Bison family, so had a family service and a funeral last week, and just could not get that thing put out by Tuesday. But it'll be a Monday afternoon deal for sure moving forward.
Absolutely looking forward to that. So for those of you that aren't familiar, that is just a film review of the television broadcast, because the All-22 film apparently doesn't come out until Saturday afternoon or something like that nowadays. So we haven't been able to get to that one until very recently. But guys, just kind of first reactions here. The Packers 42, the Lions 21. My first thought is that thank God the game is 4 quarters, because Twitter would have had me believe that the game was over at 14-3. Obviously the Packers outscore the Lions 39-7 if the math checks out there after that. But Sanjay, just kind of real quick, give me your first reaction in a general sense, really, after seeing the Packers have now moved to 2-0 for the second consecutive year under Matt LaFleur.
First, I just want to say, Todd and Ross, this is my first time actually getting to interact with you guys on a first time basis, in even meeting you guys. I love you guys' work. Thank you guys so much for, letting me chime in with you guys. As far as the game, I mean, whirlwind of emotions. And I will admit, okay, so I was golfing and I missed the entire first 6 minutes, at the first drive. I know it I had a this was an engagement I had to be at. So I was golfing and I was listening. I was actually done before the game started, but I was driving back home and listening to it on 101. But as far as what I was seeing, I mean, it was I thought, hey, is this vintage Packers? Whereas the defense can't get it going right away. Is the Packers going to be, inept on offense? Is this what it's going to happen against the lonely Lions? And I thought that's what it was going to be, because we didn't score. And it's well, let's hold the brakes there, because then obviously they were able to kick it into gear and, find a rhythm, find that mojo again, like they had in Minnesota. But it was just a whirlwind of emotions right away, but it started to feel like, whoa, this is a different team compared to that 13-3 team. And I don't know about you guys as far as your predictions and your expectations from the outlook of 2020, but I definitely had them taking a step back, at least on a 13-3 record. So this doesn't feel like that same, prediction that I had, before the season started. And that's a really cool feeling because obviously, you never know. It's hard to be 13-3 again, especially, in a new look offense, but definitely a lot of emotions this week. And it was a great win.
And we'll get into that a little bit as far as like what this team is now and what they could be here towards the end. But Ross, what are some of your first thoughts? Obviously a 39-7 run's never going to hurt anything, but the 14-3 against the Lions, maybe not as big of a deal, but next week is New Orleans. They're going to play some tougher teams as the season rolls on as well. But what are some of your thoughts on this game just specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to be tremendously worried about the defense. The Minnesota game was further apart than the score indicated, but then you saw what Indianapolis did to Minnesota, and they actually beat Minnesota in a game the way that the score indicated the actual game. Then you see, the way that they open up things against the Lions, and I'm going to be the first one to tell you, after maybe Bakhtari and Adams, Kenny Clark he's a top 4, top 5 MVP guy. You take him out of there, what they do defensively, especially, what they usually give up against the run to make sure they have the pass covered. I mean, gap wise, just simply numbers wise, they're playing light boxes always because they care about pass defense, and that's the league that we're in now. And without Kenny Clark there demanding a double team every single time, they're a free offensive lineman. And I think that's some of the stuff that you saw today, and just in general. I mentioned it right when we went on the air after the game. This Packers team can't win the Super Bowl. Now there are personnel additions, there are even just flat out improvements, schematic changes that can be made defensively to get them there. But right now, if they play defense like this, they won't get where they need to be. And I think they'll be the first ones to tell you that.
Kind of scathing right there. Okay, Todd, what are your thoughts just initially on a 21-point win here?
Like you said, luckily it's a 4-quarter game. When the game was over, I wanted it to keep going. I mean, that second half was a ton of fun. We got it going. I didn't want it to end. The start of the game got me digging through old Lions and Packers matchups, and I didn't realize that we had not taken a snap against the Lions with the lead since New Year's Day of 2017, which was forever ago. So I definitely went dark for a little bit there, kind of rolling down that hill of the depths of what could happen in this game. But I've been high on this offense, all off season. Jacob, you've heard me say time and time again that MVS is going to be a key contributor to this offense, and he needs to be for this offense to really stand out and show like it is. As far as the defense, I mean, I know we're all, not crazy about it, but when you look at it, we only gave up 89 yards rushing today, which it seemed like a lot more than that. I mean, that to start the game, they just at will, Kerryon Johnson just walked down the field. We had no answer on that one. I expected a lot more AP today, but the way that they just moved the ball that first drive, I was like, okay, here it goes. But they kind of settled in the defense in the second half. Granted, we had the lead. We were able to stop them, but I don't think Ross is wrong. It's going to be tough to win the championship against good teams. Obviously, that's what you have to do to win a championship, but it's hard to do that with a defense that just struggles to stop the run other than scoring points so the other team can't run.
And the defense, the Packers they're built to throw to get ahead or run to get ahead and then be ahead. Yeah. Your best players, without question, I think, on the defense are corners and pass rushers. So that's where your studs are. But that's fine when it's 31-17. When it's 27-24, it's not as fine. When the other team is still in their game script, it's a little more problematic.
Yeah, a defense that needs to control the game more so than it's almost like you're breathing and holding on and hoping that, a big sequence in the game was when Green Bay was trailing, I believe it was 14-10, Lions make a couple mistakes and get it to where the Packers can get a touchdown before halftime and they have that chance to double dip. But it didn't feel like that the defense really made some of those plays so much as it was Stafford takes a terrible sack in his own area, and then they get a holding penalty that essentially gifts Green Bay a free timeout. The Lions are going to do Lions things. If there's anything that hasn't changed about 2020, it's the Detroit Lions. I don't think there's any question about that. A few quick things I want to touch on as far as the injuries. Devontae Adams left with a hamstring injury, and Corey Linsley left with an injury as well. I think that was a hand is what they had said. Whether or not that's precautionary, whether they gave him some preventative rest. One thing I do know is if you guys thought Mike McCarthy was coy when it came to injuries, Matt LaFleur is that times 20. He just is not going to give you anything in terms of injuries. He did confirm on Friday that Kenny Clark wasn't going to play, but that was about it as far as what you're going to get in terms of injuries. So that's something to keep an eye on as we get later into the week and go into the showdown. The star of this game last week, it was obviously the Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams show with a sprinkle of MVS. Obviously this week it's Aaron Jones, guys. And I call him offensive weapon. That kind of became a bit of a running joke with the days of Denard Robinson coming into the NFL. But Aaron Jones in the passing game, in the rushing game, more than 200 yards of total offense, a 75-yard game breaker to start the game. Ross, you're about as vocal as anybody gets when it comes to running backs and whether or not to pay them and all that stuff. I am under the belief that they probably shouldn't pay him, but I also think that they're going to. I think that if there's anything that's been signaled by that team is that they're probably going to. But this guy is an absolute star. You've been probably the first person on his train from his rookie season when they drafted him. So tell me about your guy a little bit. And I mean, have you come around at all on potentially paying him?
No.
Okay.
But I mean, like that's kind of the issue, right? I would love a 3 or 4 year deal to bring Aaron Jones to his age 28, 29 season. I'm not a huge fan of seeing him in another uniform. I thought what Austin Eckler got from the Chargers, a similarly effective player, would have been a great deal for both sides. Now, with that said, he is outperforming that. I'm going to pass out if they give him 5 years and $63 million like the Vikings just gave Dalvin Cook. I mean, that would be beyond me. It would be even more beyond me if that came at the expense of an extension for David Bakhtiari. I think as great of a player as Aaron Jones is, re-signing a running back over extending the best left tackle in football is real serial killer stuff. I mean, just not acceptable. And so then you figure out, okay, where between the Austin Eckler deal, which I think was somewhere around $6-7 million for 3 years. It was, I can look it up here. This is great. This is great video, but I just want to be accurate with what I'm speaking to. The Eckler deal was
it was like 4 for
24, so $6 million a year. That is obviously drastically different than 5 for 63. Drastically different. So I think you have to find like your middle ground there. 4 for 36, $9 million a year, 4 for 40, and then at 4 for 40, I'm getting nervous, especially with the way that the pandemic is potentially going to affect the 2021 cap. I get really nervous when you have a star corner in Jair Alexander coming up. You certainly would love to. You need to re-sign David Bakhtiari. I mean, that just has to happen. There are good young players on this team that are going to need extensions, and 10, 11, 12 million bucks a year to Aaron Jones, as great as he is, would really make me nervous.
Considering, I mean, it's a position where you look in Jacksonville, for example, and the starting running back in Jacksonville is James Robinson from Illinois State. I mean,
I think I asked James's last press conference question of his college career.
There you go. And I saw him play in high school. He played right up the street from where I live. So, I mean, it's cool to see that. But the point on that is is he was an undrafted player, and the Jaguars just threw him out there and he ran for 100 yards. And it's not like he ran for 100 yards against some bogus team. The Titans are a very good defense. Mike Vrabel's got a tough, hard-nosed team. It's a sticky situation. I can say this much: if they re-sign Jones and don't re-sign David Bakhtiari, there are some sins that you can forgive with the general manager, Brian Gutekunst. Name whatever you want. If you hated the Jordan Love pick, fine. I think you can forgive that at some point. I don't think you can forgive that, especially with a quarterback ending the twilight of his career and a young franchise quarterback. If they choose to start Jordan Love at some point, that's a tough one to swallow, I think. Sanjay, Ross mentioned a couple names: Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey. Let's focus less on the contract and just more so on the player here. Is this guy he's not mentioned in the same breath as those two players, but should he be?
Yeah, why not? I mean, if you saw the catch, I mean, obviously everybody saw the catch. I mean, that catch is a reason why I agree, Ross. The 10 mil is a hard pill to swallow, but that catch is another reason why I haven't been full on board of paying him, but I am on the board of just looking at, he is a talented player that if you don't have him, what do you bring in after that? AJ Dillon is probably not the same kind of impact. I mean, we don't know, but he's not in that same kind of category of what Aaron Jones brings to the table. Jamal Williams, probably the same thing. You don't really have much with that. So if you are letting him go, what are you going to be getting in return? Because right now, what he did today, he took over the game today. Aaron Rodgers obviously did his thing, but I think Aaron Jones showed you why he should be in that same breath. I mean, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, those are all guys that obviously changed the tilting of a game. And Aaron Jones did that in one play. He changed the tilt of that game. I mean, obviously, anytime you get out of the break or out of the halftime, you always want to double up on your points. And he did it. He literally did it in one run. And that's exactly why, as much it hurt everybody when you couldn't sign Micah Hyde. But the whole reason you do the whole homegrown thing, you draft these guys, you develop them. He's a 5th round pick, and look what he does, and you don't reward him for it. It sucks because you're like, look, this is exactly what you're doing in the NFL. You're growing your own guys, and they produce for you, and you don't want to pay them. It's a disrespectful thing, but it's all obviously you have 52 other players that you have to figure out their money too. So, but I mean, as far as the same breath, the things he's doing on a week-to-week basis, and it's going still from last season, he has to be in that conversation. I don't know why he isn't. I know it's like that whole Green Bay hasn't had a running back kind of thing since, I'm not even going to say Eddie Lacy, because I mean, he did have a nice rookie year, but we really haven't had that impact player since, Amon Green, or I mean, I don't know if I could throw Dorsey Levens in that conversation, but this is a guy that you come to watch. He really is.
Yeah, he's a star, and he has been for 3-4 years. Not to pile on the former head coach, obviously, but I think that would be something that would be a lot more obvious if his usage rate was
exactly. He wasn't even used for like a good year.
Exactly. So, and some injury issues obviously before that. It looks like, at least now, knock on wood, that Matt LaFleur has kind of found that sweet spot between using him enough and not using him too much. And Todd, again, let's not focus too much on the contract stuff on things here, but just the player himself is something I noticed in the passing game is the catch that we're talking about and some of the other stuff ever since really that Kansas City game last year where he just torched them, is they were able, and since then defenses have kind of been covering him with defensive backs. And that's an interesting mismatch that they can kind of do. Because now you want to talk about, Matt LaFleur talks about tying the running game to the passing game, and maybe teams have to play a little bit lighter against them now. And just one more thing that they can do against them just because they have a guy like this. But I mean, again, how good is Aaron Jones? And is this somebody that you're looking to keep around for the foreseeable future?
I think he's really good. I mean, he does it every week. It seems like the problem with keeping him around for the future, like we said, the contract stuff, it's all there and it's tough. One thing I look at is when you kind of pick through the stable of backs that are there and you think, how much is it going to cost to bring Jamal back? Because he's a free agent too. And you've got AJ Dillon there. And so then you kind of look around the league at other teams that run this style of an offense. And I go down and you look in Tennessee and they've got Henry, but then who do they have? Deion Lewis. kind of running the scat back or the gadget back type stuff. So just like you said down there in Jacksonville with Robinson, like here's an undrafted guy that can go out there and do it. There are running backs that are out there that can do it. And yeah, it sucks to not pay the guys that you bring in. You find them, you bring them in, they do their job incredibly well, and you can't pay them. But it's not that they don't want to. It's that eventually you can or you can't. And when it comes down to it, there's a lot of guys on this team that need to get paid. And I think running backs we've seen, they're kind of a dime a dozen. Obviously not at Aaron Jones's talent level all the time, but if you can make that up with 2 or 3 guys and still be productive out of the backfield, then that might be the way to go if it's going to cost you 10+ mil to stick with him.
And that's kind of the question Green Bay is going to have to ask is, can they get 80% of Jones's production with Dylan and a draft pick, or Dylan and Jamal, or Dylan and somebody else at a fraction of the cost? Because Ross mentioned some of the other names, Jair Alexander, David Bakhtiari. He didn't mention Devontae Adams, who's got a contract year coming up as well. That's somebody else that, there's a lot of names, and I'm thankful I am not Russ Ball. And that doesn't even include some of the guys that are on this team that you might need to talk about: extensions, restructures, pay cuts. There's a lot of different stuff. The free agent spending spree that they did a couple years ago was fun, and it helped rebuild this team in a hurry. This is kind of where you have to pay the piper a little bit, so to speak, is now they have to figure out how to replace certain guys, and Jones may very well end up being one of those. So that'll be interesting to see. Again, thankful I'm not Russ Ball. Honestly, I guess in a nutshell, if they can keep David Bakhtiari and find a number that's at least most of the way sensible for Jones, then I'll figure out a way to be okay with it. And I think
I know where there's some money.
All of us will say that. Are you going to mention the quarterback? Because that's not going to be part of this show.
No. This guy's got dreads and he plays on the offensive line. That's all.
Oh, I think that's going to be a conversation that maybe we don't have with the North Dakota State guy here, but that could be a different conversation for a different day. That part is interesting too, because I tend to think that, well, LaFleur pretty much confirmed it after the game that Turner was active, but he was basically active only in case everybody else was hurt. Yeah. Let's talk about somebody else. This guy's on the defense, and that's Rashawn Gary. And the point that Peter Bukowski made, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I wanted to bring it up, was last week he led the team in pressures. This week had a sack and a half, kind of partied at the quarterback with Preston Smith, and had a sack of his own where that one was pretty nasty. The hand usage was able to kind of just get the tackle off of him. He's looked like a different player since camp, and it's been a bit of a leap for him this year. I think, Ross, on your article on Monday or Tuesday, whenever it went up, I read it said you think that his leap, if it's coming, is in 2021. But today was a bit of a start for that. What have you seen from Rashawn so far just to start this season? And do you at least maybe agree with the assessment? Granted, it's 2 games, and obviously nobody's going to say Rashawn's a better player right now than Za'Darius or Preston Smith, but has he been their best player through those first 2 games?
No, Za'Darius has, but I think, and I mentioned this right after the game. What you've seen with Rashawn are what you will see with Rashawn, which is, he's one of the best athletes in the history of the NFL Combine, period. Like, people that are 272 pounds don't move the way that he moves. And sometimes when you have somebody with that much burst, at that much weight, with that much strength, you can get these bull rushes, or like these, where I think it was Andre Smith is who they brought in for at right tackle for the Lions. Well, he's trying to chip, and there's just a split second of miscommunication. And Gary is so twitchy, so bursty that he was able to split that double team, or split that basically blown chip. But what you didn't see there was an arm over, or a dip, or a rip, or a spin. You didn't see a pass rush move. And I think you will at some point, hopefully. And that's what I'm talking about, that jump. But you're still just seeing an athlete, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And that's great. Some of the best, all of the best, basically, pass rushers that are great are phenomenal athletes. Von Miller, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, like, the studs are freaks as well as technically sound. Rashawn needs to continue to work with Mike Smith to become technically sound. Most of his pressures so far that I've seen have been athlete pressures, and that's great. And if he continues to do that, great, super. when I want to see that jump, when I want to see that progression from Rashawn Gary is, winning on his primary move or getting a tackle to set wide, counter inside, meet at the quarterback. Do play more football than play athlete. But he's a hell of an athlete.
Yeah, that's a great start. I think what we kind of talked about after the pick was made was basically somebody that big, that fast, that strong with that athletic profile. There is no ceiling. And that's kind of what the Packers, I think, are thinking. So, Todd, obviously we didn't know each other, which is that was a more fortunate time in my life, obviously, but I do know you now. And what were your thoughts on the pick at the time was made? And what are your thoughts on him through his first, 18 games of his career and kind of the leap that he made, I guess, today? The nice part was to see, obviously, that last week he has 3 pressures. This week he has a few pressures, but it leads to a couple different plays, and including, a pressure that led to a pick 6 for Chandon Sullivan.
Initially, I liked the pick when it came in. After being so thin at pass rusher that we were forced to have Nick Perry out there longer than he needed to be, the more you can have, the better. We kind of saw that. And then bringing him in too, and him not really having that set position or really knowing right away how they wanted to use him, understanding he was going to get that time to kind of hone his skills. And like Ross said, he's an athlete. Put him where he wants to go or where you need him, and he'll figure out a way to not be an absolute liability out there. And as he works through now and has some time to grow and learn the system and play the way that Mike Pettin wants him to play and needs him to play, it's just pure upside on this guy.
And Sanjay, that maybe Rashawn Gary and the pass rush as a whole hasn't quite been as dominant as maybe if I had told you Green Bay had leads of 29-10 against Minnesota and 31-17 or 31-14 or, whatever the split with 3 possession leads essentially in each of their first 2 games, you would probably tell me that they have like 10 to 12 sacks and a million quarterback hits and stuff like that. And it just hasn't been that as of yet. Does that concern you at all as we move forward on this season? Or would you say it's just a short sample at the moment? Sanjay, we're missing a mic. So if we can figure that part out, we're going to go into that. So Sanjay's talking, but nobody can hear you.
All right, here we go. Sorry. Number 97. There we go. Sorry. Number 97. It's a fluid thing with that line, and that creates that pressure as well. They're taking stress off from those, guards helping out those tackles. And I just think that you're seeing what the impact that obviously Kenny Clark has in that middle. And, I think what I've been noticing, they're still getting there, but, obviously they're not getting home as much as we'd like. But, I just think the defensive line is obviously my biggest, scare as far as what we look like. I know the pass rush is, what you asked me, but like it's counter. It's part of it. It's just what they can do to, relieve that pressure on the outsides can give them that home run hit. And so I'm still in hope that we can, obviously up it up. Or up the pressures. And I think, as far as Preston and Za'Darius, I think they've shown that at least they are consistent enough in their pass rushes. I'm not a pass rush guy, but I will say, at least from watching it, you can see the evidence of what it means that 97 is not there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's a couple plays today, for example, I think there was a 3rd down where Stafford escaped up the middle, and like you immediately think like that's a pass rushing situation where, instead of Kenny Clark rushing, we have Montravius Adams and Tyler Lancaster pushing up the middle. Nothing against those guys, but those guys aren't pass rushers. That's just not something they're going to be able to do. The numbers are there a little bit. Za'Darius has a sack in each of the first 2 games. That's great. Preston Smith a little bit quieter, which you can call that disappointing if you want to. I think it's
he's in a lot of coverage, which I don't really want to see a lot. I saw a couple times where he was getting beat in coverage. I'm like, what? You're kind of paying him for
forward,
one thing.
Don't go backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the obsession that some defensive coordinators and coaches have, and the stuff we talk about, and this is stuff around the combine and draft stuff all the time with pass rushers moving back away from the quarterback. I mean, I know Preston can do that every once in a while, and that's great.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. So that's something hopefully that Mike Patton realizes he doesn't understand. And next week he's got players getting after Drew Brees, because something you need to know is next week, I don't know if next week's game is a cure for the pass rush, just because Drew Brees is get the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible. That's a game where the Packers are going to have to be really, really sound in their coverage and making tackles, because Brees is not going to hold the ball the way that some of these other quarterbacks they're facing might. So that'll be something to watch. But guys, much like last year, and we'll finish up here, they're 2-0. They're 2-0 in the division. They've won one game on the road. They've won one game at home, but it looks very, very different this year than it did last year. Last year, they obviously won a slogfest in Chicago. One touchdown between the two teams. They get an interception in the back of the end zone from not a playmaker, Adrian Amos, to finish off that game against Chicago. And then Minnesota, they score 21 points in a blink and then just kind of hang on for dear life. And Kirk Cousins throws up an airmail at the end of the game. This year, back-to-back 40 burgers. The defense is not, I don't think, you're going to see Aaron Rodgers smiling and saying, we've got a defense necessarily after these first two games. I think you could say the defense has been good enough. I don't even know if you would even say that, actually, I guess, off of that point. But you look around the NFC now, San Francisco just lost probably their best player for the entire season with Nick Bosa going down with an injury. That's a big deal. You look around at some of the NFC East is what it has been, what it feels like for the last 10 years, and wildly mediocre. You look at the NFC South, Tampa Bay has a 45-year-old quarterback that's not very good anymore. New Orleans is probably good. The NFC West is good. Seattle currently trailing right now to New England 14-7, and Arizona looks like a surprise team. But Ross, you mentioned that this team can't win the Super Bowl with the way they're presently playing. Now, like you said, there are things that can change. They can make additions. They could, have a defensive lineman come in, a receiver, just something. They could add something. And Brian Gutekunst has shown a willingness to be active at the trading deadline in the past, or at least signing guys and bringing people in, whatever that case may be. But what can they do? What can they be? What is this team's ceiling? Because I think it's been, like kind of Sanjay mentioned earlier, widely expected that this team is going to take a step backwards from 13-3. But I don't know if a lot of people even really have this team as taking a step backwards, but still being a bona fide Super Bowl contender.
And they are. I mean, they are a Super Bowl contender. There's no question about that. You think about how well the 2010 team was playing on both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And this team is not playing that way defensively. They're not playing even as well as last year's Chiefs were, and they're probably not that good on offense, though they're good. It seems to be that they are good. Just kind of from top to bottom, though, I think defensively they need to play better. Offensively, I don't have a lot of concerns right now. I think a lot of those will be kind of fleshed out due to injury. I think honestly, getting Billy Turner in there for Lucas Patrick is going to be a major upgrade as long as he's healthy. Billy Turner from week 1 to 16 was a very average to above average NFL guard, and that has value, tremendous value, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Week 17 and playoff Billy Turner was hurt and he wasn't good. There's just no way around it. But getting him in there to play next to Wagner, I think would be a big move forward for the team. I think that would be the best version of this offense. Then just a little confidence boosters for Jay Sternberger, little confidence boosters from Valdez Scantling. But man, Lazard is just nails, and so is Aaron Jones. And we haven't even seen what A.J. Dillon can do, except for some really exciting things against like 9.5 man boxes. Defensively, though, Savage and Amos, man, they have to be better. They are. Mm-hmm. One is paid to be better, and the other is drafted to be better. And once those guys get going, I think everything in front of them can tighten up a little bit as well.
Yeah, that was something that felt like on the broadcast was just they've had a really tough start to the year. Maybe I need to say something about that because I said Chandon Sullivan's had a rough start to the season, and like 5 plays later, he had a pick 6. So, and actually, not just the pick 6, he had a really nice stretch of play after.
Well, right, and Chandon was really rough against Minnesota, specifically in run support. He was abysmal, and then got beat up on by Amendola a little bit early. And then the pick 6 and the PBU to force a punt were just absolutely game-shifting plays.
Yeah, and he had another play later in the game like that. Sometimes with a player like that, it almost feels like it's, Jay Sternberger is kind of this way as well. It's one play of they're put in that position because the team is confident, but they're not necessarily confident in themselves. And that's the one play that kind of turns that tide to them. Sanjay, it's different. Like we've said, 40, you don't have any hair because of one of those games, obviously, but how good can this team be? How good can this offense be? I mean, have they quelled some of your concerns moving forward?
Look, man, we probably missed out on 3 touchdowns today. The drops are so they hurt a lot. And Jay Sternberger he's probably getting a bad grade this week because I mean, I don't know how you miss 2 catches that are literally in your hands. I mean, obviously rookie, or it's kind of his rookie campaign. He's still, adjusting to the NFL life, but MVS as well. I know he comes back and he gives you that big, deep play that he gives you, but the drops, I feel like we missed out on 3 touchdowns. I think we could have easily been in the 50s today. And you could even argue last week too. And we took the pedal or our foot off the pedal, in the fourth quarter when we had 6 minutes left. And that's another, probably a good score if we really wanted to be aggressive and run up the score. But, I think this offense is something scary. I mean, I want to see what happens on a perfect game because, like when we had that Raiders game where everything was working right, I would love to see what that score would be because the 40 burgers probably would be coming out and I might actually say 40 points in my prediction.
Yeah. And the Packers have had, I believe if memory serves, so that I'm going off memory, so forgive me, but they've punted twice in 2 games.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And both of them are because
I forgot who our punter is.
Yeah. Both of them were because of self-inflicted wounds as well. This wasn't like, it's not like, well, no, they've punted more than twice because they punted a couple times today, actually, now that I think about it. But the punt team hasn't participated a ton. But anytime they've punted, it's not like the opposing defense has made a lot of plays. It really has been friendly fire, self-inflicted wounds, whether it's a drop or the first punt that sticks out in my head is when Rodgers took a sack when the team was in field goal range. Sternberger had the drop before that. They had the holding penalty before that. There was just so much that went wrong in a short span of time. I think that what I would like to see is, like you said, Sanjay, it's kind of the same against Minnesota. Is Minnesota had nothing, no answers for Green Bay. And Green Bay, the only time Minnesota stopped Green Bay was when Green Bay stopped themselves. Right. I mean, they kicked 2 field goals and turned the ball over on downs in the red zone. Otherwise, it was a smoke show for this Packers offense. And I think that's what is the most exciting. I think overall, Ross mentioned it, and Ross had to take off, obviously. So we want to thank Ross for stopping by. Find him over at Packer Report, obviously, and at Ross Uglem for his Twitter handle. But thank you to Ross for that. He mentioned if these defensive players, Savage and Amos, you get a little more consistent production from the pass rush and Kenny Clark back in the lineup. I mean, this is a defense where I think there is more raw talent on the defensive side of the ball than the offense. So if the offense can score, and it certainly looks like they can score, if the defense can do just enough, it kind of feels like what we've been saying for the entire Aaron Rodgers tenure as the starting quarterback. But I think this defense has more talent than maybe any group that he's ever had. Todd, they're 2-0. They're 2-0 in the division. They have a big game against New Orleans next week. How good can this team be? Are they a title contender?
I think they are. And Jacob, you and I were talking about it earlier, and these 2 matchups that they just had worked great for not having a preseason. We saw a lot of good stuff come out of there. We saw a lot of bad stuff too. I think, the drops, those are typically things that you see early in camp. They're in the preseason, and then they kind of work themselves out. The missed tackles, the miscommunications on defense, those things kind of shake themselves out. So these guys getting that time to play together, being able to work through those issues. I think a big thing was, MVS, he had the second hit that he took, the one down the sideline that he caught. I think just the fact that he held on to that after taking that, the kind of scary moment that he had diving for that one, but then to know he's going to take that hit again and still hold on to that ball, even though he was out of bounds, that just, again, that's those drops working themselves out. It's him building that confidence and working off of that. I think we'll see Sternberger get there. Otherwise, hopefully we see DeGuara get back in there and Sternberger just finds a lesser role, which would be unfortunate for him because I think he's going to be really good. But I think those are some things that they'll work out as they go the defense will start clicking and playing better together. You know, brand new middle linebackers, both positions there for the most part. The safeties, they've got to play better. That's really what it comes down to on that back end. But I think, you know, you get those guys playing better, you get Kenny Clark back in there, and this is definitely a title contender.
I'm sorry, you mentioned DeGuara. What's his first name again?
Josiah?
Yeah, I love Josiah.
I'm going to use the crap out of that graphic between now and the end of the year. So that's kind of my thoughts as well, guys. They're 2-0. It looks different than last year. Something I believe about the modern NFL is that that offense is more sustainable from a week to week than a defense is. And that's why, you know, I was concerned last year as the game continued to go, because if you're playing defense, and I'm not saying, I know the common phrase, I guess, is defense wins championships, but I think that's outdated. And you guys just saw it a year ago where the number one offense beat the number one defense. So I'm not saying that'll happen every single time, but just from a week to week sample in the regular season of the NFL, I think that the offense is going to be more sustainable because there's less moving parts on stuff like that. So I think that this team, they're 2-0. It looks different than it has. I would like to see them. I mentioned this during the game, how when they get that lead, I would like this defense to almost take the attitude of suffocate them and step on their, you know, something that these teams that the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks had, or the 2000-ish Ravens with Ray Lewis, and these teams that just had that mentality of, you're not going to score. I don't care what the score is. I don't care about the clock. What I care about is the point. Our offense can run the clock. We're not going to let you run the clock. We're not going to let you score. That's the big point. And I'm not saying that we're letting them, shout out mom, but I would like to see them play a little bit less soft throughout the course of the game. And let's get after some people and get some things going. Guys, we've run a little bit long on time. I appreciate you guys for sticking around with me. Let's go around the NFL just a little bit, just to have a little bit of fun with everything. Anything that stood out today to you guys? My biggest thing is Minnesota sucks. And I mean, it's something I've been trying to explain.
It looks good
to people.
though, right?
Oh, it's great. Something I've been trying to explain to people since the season kind of started, and we've had this discussion about, you know, could Minnesota win the division? And I was like, what is Minnesota good at that matters? They can't pass block. Kirk Cousins is their quarterback. So it's like, that's not a terrible thing. I mean, he's not Mitch Trubisky, but he's not Aaron Rodgers either. So
he wasn't that good.
Well, today he was not, no, but it's like, he's not going to mask the flaws of a team that has things like that. They rush the passer okay, but they really don't have any beef in the middle. And their corners are really young. They're in a transition year as far as their cornerbacks go. I think this is a year where you're going to see Minnesota not quite bottom out, because I don't think they're going to finish 3-13 or anything stupid like that. And I hope they don't, because I'd like to see them finish like 8-8 and miss out on Trevor Lawrence and those kinds of guys too. But Minnesota stinks, and I don't see any end in sight for anything like that. And then the Atlanta Falcons, just maybe they should just never play with a lead. Like, just ever play with a lead. Like, did they not know that you can touch the ball before it goes 10 yards?
I don't know if that special teams coach needs to be like put on notice, or if this.
I would fire him like today.
That was Hayden Hurst. It wasn't like some random Joe. Like, that was Hayden Hurst right there that could have easily made a play. So I'm a little confused. I'm baffled, actually.
Yeah.
The only thing I thought on that is that those guys were standing there looking at the spin on that, going, I'm going to wait for somebody else to jump on that one, because you're not going to stop. I don't think you get to the NFL having that cowardice of an attitude of going, well, I can't make that play. I can't grab that ball off the ground. That's just not something I'm capable of. I'll let someone else do it. But I mean, it had that spin, and that was the only thing, is that those guys were looking at it like, I've never seen a ball spin like that before, so I'm going to stay away. But it was definitely not a good look, and I don't know if the entire coaching staff should be getting a ride home.
We talked about this pre-show, Todd, and we mentioned a game that happened in the Pacific Northwest, and at the time I was pro not firing the head coach. But the more I think about it, if you lose a game like that in the postseason, so for Atlanta's sake, because I'm not going to bring up the game that happened in Seattle, but if you are winning 28-3, greetings from Germany. Guten Tag, my friend. That is awesome. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Ach nein. That's all I know.
Don't really have anything of note. Just wondering if the Roundtable misses McCarthy. Listen,
No.
as a coach, no. Listen, I think Mike McCarthy is the best coach in the history of this franchise, not named Vince Lombardi. That being said, his time had run its course, and they're in a great position with Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur is one of the best coaches in the NFL, and he doesn't get his due, and I feel very comfortable in saying things like that. He has been phenomenal as somebody that when he got hired, everybody just kind of went, what? Matt LaFleur? Like, I don't know who people thought was going to get the job, but he didn't get I know like Josh McDaniels was a popular name, but I think my lucky stars every day, that's not who the head coach is of the Green Bay Packers. I don't trust that dude as far as I can throw him. So, Todd, I believe you referred to him as Mashed Potato Mike. So I'm going to go ahead and guess you don't miss Mike McCarthy.
I don't miss him. Much like Sanjay made a bet, I too made a bet with McCarthy that if he sees the start of year 3 in Dallas, I will get a bowl of mashed potatoes tattooed on my rear end.
Well, you're going to lose that bet. I will.
You know what? I feel like Jerry has changed, and he will cut his
Jason
losses.
Garrett coached that team for a decade.
And he learned from this. Jerry, he's got a shorter leash now.
The coach farted in his office. What are you?
Did you see how much they cheered today? They it's as if they won the Super Bowl today.
I know, and he's gonna get their hopes up, and then they're gonna go back.
Not only that, but like Mike McCarthy's a good coach. They're going to win with him.
He's a very successful NFL head coach. Yes, he's told us about it.
And he's correct when he said that. That is objectively factual when he said that. You know that, right?
Absolutely, but he is just as boring as unsalted mashed potatoes in his play calling, in his personality, and in his body type, which again, I got the same thing going on. I get it, Mike. We're big guys, but I don't miss him. I was ready for him to go, and I think him and Dallas deserve each other.
Sanjay, I will fight this man. Listen, no, I'm not going to fight you. Like I said, his time was up. Mike McCarthy, I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple different times. He's one of the best men I've ever had the fortune of meeting. He was a really good coach in his time here. His time was up. I don't wish him well in Dallas because he's in Dallas and I hate the Cowboys, but I wish him as well as you can wish the Cowboys head coach, if that makes any sense. So, anyways, I had asked originally about your impressions from around the NFL. So we were talking about, I guess the Cowboys kind of relay into that, but anything else that you guys noticed around the NFL today that you guys want to go over?
It's cool to see that like the whole best division kind of thing kind of like changes like yearly. And, there was a second where we were kind of maybe the toughest division. Obviously the NFC South is always going to be talked about. But that NFC West, I mean, I know the 49ers lost a lot of guys today. It was a bad week. But, the Cardinals is an interesting story, and the Rams look good again. And that's without all those big names, that you're kind of like wondering to cast the characters of like who. And I know they just signed Robert Woods like last night, I think, or today. I forgot what day that was. But, that division definitely is, we're watching the Seahawks too, and they just tied it up, but it's going to be a tough division. And I wouldn't be surprised if 2 teams coming out of that division for the playoffs. Heck, maybe 3. I don't know.
I would say all 4 of those teams might be good, right? I mean, I wasn't very high on Seattle, but Arizona's looked really good through 2 weeks. Yes. They've won both of their games. They beat San Francisco last week. That was a big one, obviously. Yeah. Beat up on Washington today, so that is what it is. But you got to win against who's in front of you.
Yeah, you got to
Todd, what do you make of the Bears? Because obviously the NFC North has 2 2-0 teams and 2 0-2 teams. Bears obviously have the big comeback last week against Detroit. They survive a last-second win today against the Giants. I literally saw the last play, and that was it as far as that game went. But what do you make of Chicago? Is this the team, if you will, to fear in the NFC North?
I mean, you saw more of that game than I did.
Oh, kudos. Okay.
But my stepdad's home, and he's a Bears fan, so he was talking about it.
Well, you can't pick your stepdad, I guess.
I don't know. Unfortunately, not on it. It's his biggest fault. It's one of his few, so we let it slide. They're not. I mean, they played the Lions. They're 2-0. They played the Lions last week, and they won. And I'll leave it at that. They played the Giants this week. who are the Giants? Name 5 people that play for
And they lost Saquon.
And I would say the Giants' best player got hurt in the first half. So
exactly. No, I'm not. They're the Bears. They're going to have a solid defense, and just if Mitch plays well, fantastic. He's played well for a quarter this year. That means he's got 2.5 quarters of playing well left this year. Maybe 3 if he progresses. So no, I'm not concerned.
I will say this: of the teams in the North, the Bears were the ones that worried me the most, just because if you went before the season and asked me which team has the best individual unit, I said the Bears defense was the best individual unit on all 4 of those teams. And I still think that's true. Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, Robert Quinn, Roquan Smith, Eddie Jackson. They've got some players on that side of the ball. That being said, you answered your question when you said Mitchell Trubisky. Eventually, Green Bay is going to be able to score. Last year they were able to put up points on that defense. They just kind of got into a slog against them a couple different times. This year the offense is better. It's more efficient. I think they'll be able to do some things against them. So that's my thought on the NFC North as a whole. Guys, we are out of time. I thank you guys for stopping in. Be sure to check us out at Game On WI on Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Game On Wisconsin. Check out the website, GameOnWI.com. Tuesday nights, we've got Bring in the Funk. Sanjay, Fred, and Matt, the Freezer podcast. Sanjay, obviously, with a freshly shaven head. So we don't have any bets like that. I got to get Fred to make a bet or something like that. I feel like, I don't know. Does Fred have hair? I've never seen Fred without a hat.
He does. So he has good hair too. And I don't know why he doesn't show it. He just loves his hat. So
okay.
Stay tuned on Tuesday. Maybe you might get a bet.
There you go. Okay. So I'm going to have to check that out on Tuesday night. And Todd, we've obviously got him in the bar on Wednesday nights with Dan Kotnick and Jimmy Christensen with Lombardi's Bar. And you can catch me all over the place. So if there's a spot to fill in, I try and find that as much as I can. 3:21 in the morning, Robin. Kudos. Like, that is awesome that you stayed up to stick around with us. The Packers really are a worldwide thing. Thank you guys for that. That was awesome. Thank you guys for sticking around in the chat. Justin Backwards, thank you for sticking around. Corey, obviously, thank you for coming around. Fred, you were here. I did know that. I just didn't bring you up earlier. So Fred, thanks for stopping in. Mom, always a pleasure, obviously. My mom watches every show, so that's great for those kinds of things. But guys, it was fun. The Packers are 2-0. That's really what matters the most to all of us. I think we would feel pretty confident in saying that. But check out everything. We've got everything coming starting tomorrow. It's Victory Monday tomorrow with the happy hour. So Maggie Loney and Perry Goldstein will take you guys through everything. Thank you guys for listening, and go Pack Go.